changed the maps, they moved the lines, covered up the ancient signs, buried towers in the mud, washed the truth out with a flood. What was up is now below, but the stars still tell what the preachers want. The world ain't round and the shore ain't free. There's a dome above and a glassy sea. 1,000 years he reigned in peace. Now the chains are loose and the wolves released. This is Satan's little season and the judge is on his way.
Exactly that. So what you see here is the first 7 courses of ashlars. They are dated from 19 BC. Actually, they are ended after the death of Herodes. They're not so important, maybe 20 after Christ, okay? And then right on top, we have the Arab ashlars of the Umayyads of the 7th and 8th century. Right on top. Mm-hmm. So and if you look at these ashlars carefully, you would say, okay, not that many differences. But what you learn at the same time is that the Arabs were not able to issue coins for at least 600 years. They forgot the ability to issue coins. They issued coins. The Nabatean Arabs living around Jerusalem, they issued their own coins, and then they forgot to issue coins. And when they restarted issuing coins 600 years later, they just continued with the decourse of 600 years before, when they had forgotten to issue coins. My claim is the Arabs did not forget for some 600 or more years. They did not forget to issue coins. What we have done is we have put archaeologically empty centuries between the Nabatean Arab coins and the Umayyad Arab coins. But that's not the interesting story I want to tell you. When you learn that the Romans destroyed Jerusalem, you learn that they razed the city, and that the city lay waste at least up to the time of Emperor Hadrian for 60 years. But if you look carefully at who conquered Jerusalem, the high commander, he was an Italian in modern language, but the troops were all Arabs. You see, the Romans would recruit the soldiers where they lived. It was so Jerusalem was not destroyed by Italians. It was destroyed by Arabs. And this is well known because we have tombstones of officers of the legion that destroyed Jerusalem. So we have one big problem here. If Arabs in the service of Rome destroyed Jerusalem in 70 after Christ, why would they wait for 600 years to live in the city? Why would they do that? I get no answer to this question. But if I look at what these Arabs 600 years later use, it's on the right side here, it's a floor, a mosaic floor with this abstracted peacock pattern. So that's dated around 700, 800, 690, not so precise. Right. And at the left side, the model is from Pompeii. That's 1st century after Christ. So these mosaics are 600 to 700 years apart. So if the Nabateans, whose soldiers conquered Jerusalem, are the same as the Umayyads, then we understand that the Arabs moved right into Jerusalem after they conquered it. That's why the Arab ashlars sit right on the Herodian ashlars on the western wall. That's why the Arabs use the same mosaics, or if you go down, that's why the Arabs use the same millefiori glass and the same glass bottles. they're put 700 years apart, and you cannot tell the difference. You can see that these glass items were even made in the same workshop. The same here. You have this Millefiori glass. It's a very sophisticated item, and you have it in the 1st century, and then you have it again in the 8th century. Today we do a very strange, we deal in a very strange way with the Arabs. We say, okay, you forgot to issue coins, you forgot to write, you forgot to make glass like this, you forgot everything. So that's a bit denigrating. But then suddenly we say, but 700 years later, you were geniuses. You saved civilization. You saved the Roman writings and the Greek writings. But it's not so much of a compliment. Why didn't they do their own writing, their own books on astronomy? And so why would they use the Greek and the Roman texts? So in reality, if you take out these 600 or 700 years here, the Arabs and the Romans and the Greeks were living side by side, and they were exchanging their scholarly ideas at the same time. And the Arabs were part of high civilization in the 2nd century and in the 1st century. They did not show up in the 7th or 8th century and were ignorant for the centuries in between. Not at all. I regard them as active partners in Roman civilization. And if it comes to these wonderful colored glass items, I think there are Arab inventions and Israeli inventions, because these glass workshops are found all along the Levant in today's Israel and today's Lebanon.
Right. Eternal Berkshire's Ben, with your questioning of dates, where do you put Islam, Muhammad, and the Quran? And do you believe the Quran came from Mecca or Petra? Go Red Sox.
So the so-called Luxembourg School, a school of German Arabists, they established long ago that the oldest text of the Quran are Aramaic texts from the 1st century after Christ. But they believe in mainstream chronology, so they say they took 1st century after Christ texts to write their the Quran probably was written around 800, 900. They took 1st century material to write a book in the 9th century. And I think the book or the elements that form the Quranic book were around in the 1st century after Christ, which means in the time in which Arabs under Roman coats of arms occupy Jerusalem and make Jerusalem their center. The biggest building built in Jerusalem after the destruction of the Herodian temple are Arab buildings. We must not forget that these famous Umayyad palaces at the southern and western wall of the Temple Mount, enormous buildings that were just wiped out. We did not know about them until the 1970s, when they were discovered by Israeli archaeologists, because they were wiped out in the 930s catastrophe. So when we think about that the Muslims first prayed to Jerusalem, so I say, yes, that's the time in which it was the first texts were put together, where they originated. And that's the time where Islam originated. But the date we learn about Islam, around 700, 800, it's closer to the truth than the date we have for Jesus. Because stratigraphically, Jesus moves up to the 8th century, beginning of the 8th century, and his mausoleum, built by Constantine, stratigraphically 1st century, but in our chronology that counts from the top down, it's some time after 700, 730, 740. So we can see that Islam develops parallel to Christianity. And I go a step further. I think if I look at the earliest Umayyad coins, the Jewish candelabra, the 7 arm candelabra, I assume, and that's a speculation. I call it a speculation.
We have another question.
That Islam of the Umayyads develops as an attempt to keep Judaism alive after the Jews were mostly killed, wiped out by the Romans, which means under Roman leadership, by help, of course, of Arab soldiers that were doing, in quotation marks, their duty as Roman soldiers. There's one book in the Christian Bible, that's the book of Revelation. And in chapter 20 of Revelation, you have this story that an angel will chain, in the time of Jesus, will chain the devil. And after 1,000 years, he will unchain the devil. And that will be the final battle of Megiddo, of Armageddon. And my assumption, but it's a rough, crude speculation. You cannot have no means to prove that. My assumption is that the decision for a year 1000 AD was a theological decision. That the catastrophe in the 10th century, that was the unchaining of the devil that was mentioned in the book of Revelation. So the apocalyptic texts in the Bible, they deal with real catastrophes of the past, like the Exodus catastrophe. And then something happened in the 930s. Big, global, up to the Yucatan. We didn't mention this here.
Yeah, we didn't.
Big, and so I think it was not far-fetched to say, aha, this was the day of the Lord. This was the day that Satan was unchained after 1,000 years. And now we start counting from 1000 AD, though we are only in 1000 AD, some 270, 260 years after Christ.
So we are bound by the tab and the hay, the signature of grace that will not sway. In the Sabbath of his rest we find our home. Through the little season we are not alone. Jesus, the covenant, the Aleph and the Tor, resting in the healing of your perfect law.
Yo, look at the clock, look at the season. Satan is loose, but he hasn't a reason to think he can break what the Father has sealed. The covenant's active, the promise revealed. From the Bet to the Gimel, the house is secure. The path to the kingdom is holy and pure. Hebrews 4:11, we strive for that rest, while the world is distracted and put to the test. It's a little season, but an eternal king. Hear the frequency rise in the songs that we sing.